Hey everybody, what's up? I'm here in my shop and just me and my fro hanging out. You know, this thing's big enough, I think, at this point that there's two entities going on here. There's me, Mikey, and then there's the fro, which is like I've decided just to not do anything about it. Since COVID started, I'm like, I'm not getting a haircut, I'm not shaving, I'm just gonna, just rebel against God knows what, the virus itself. But this thing is just, it's a mop, buddy. But I'll tell you what, the girlies love to stick their hands in it. That's for sure. Feet too sometimes, I'm 50. It can be feet at this point now, So, okay, so let's go on with some audiophile terms. I thought this would be kind of a good topic because someone Tex asked me the other day, what's a line stage, man? And I was like, yes, grasshopper. I do know what a line stage is. And I figured, I'll let you guys in on the audiophile terms because if you drop these terms around people, you're going to let them know that you're on the level. It's just like anything. If you start to talk to somebody about cars, you're going to know pretty quick if this guy knows racing or not, just depending by the terms that they use. Do you have, industry specific terms, or do you know about certain things? You can size somebody up pretty quick. So the audiophile terms, you use the term line stage, for instance, which means preamp. It's the technical term for preamp. And that's what a line stage is. So if you say line stage, someone's going to, if they're another audiophile, they're going to pick up on it and they're going to know, okay, you're an audiophile if you're calling it line stage. It's like, let's see, another would be, interconnects. Okay, they're not RCA and XLRs. They are, RCA and XLRs, but the term for those things is called interconnects. Most people that aren't into hi-fi, they don't call them interconnects. So if you call them interconnects, that will sort of clue somebody that's maybe just totally not into it or something like that. They'll be like, what's that? Because for us, that's kind of a basic term. Let's see, something a little more challenging maybe. Okay, so a crossover is a filter section, okay? So those are called filters. Crossovers, it's a filter, okay? And so a sub out or a sub out is a low pass filter, okay? That means it passes the low frequency and it holds the other stuff back. For the main panel, it would be a high pass filter for the mids and highs. So you got a filter section is where you cross it over. So that you refer to the crossover as a filter if you are in the know. Let's see here. You could, if you do active, well, this describes a type of a rig. If you do an active, even if you even say biamp, okay, and you kind of really have to sort of have to be an audiophile to be talking about biamping a rig or actively biamping, which just means a biamp means that you use 2 amp channels per the right side and 2 amp channels per the left side. You biamp, meaning 2 amplifiers per channel. Triamp, you can quad amp, you can go all the way up, but usually not many people go past quad amp. My big rig is a quad amp rig. It is also active, so it's an active quad amp rig. So when you say active, what you're doing is you're telling the person that you cross it over before the amplifiers. Okay, so you filter your signal before the amplifiers. Normally, the crossover comes after the amplifier. It's at the speaker, okay? And you send a full range, which is what it's called, a full range signal. You send that to the speaker. The speaker then has a filter section. The filter section divvies up the highs, the mids, the lows in a 3-way. And it's going to send the lows to the sub, or to the woofer, the mids to the mid, and the highs to the tweeter. So that is called a passive crossover, passive filter section that's inside the speaker. Now, when you go active and you have, let's say you say active, I've got an active triamp rig, triamp meaning 3 on each side. That means you have low, mid, and high frequencies of the signal they are filtered before the amplifier. So you leave your preamp or whatever, you're going to your normal amp, to your amp from there. Normally it'd just be you go straight to the amp. Well, you divvy it up beforehand, and so you have 3 amplifiers on the left side, 3 amplifiers on the right side. One amp does the low frequency, 1 amp does the mid frequency, 1 amp does the high frequency. Now that is kind of the creme de la creme of hookups. You have extended everything out into separates. You know how, typically speaking, you can say, well, if you have like a Denon receiver or something like that, it's cheap because everything's all together in one box. And as you go up in hi-fi, they're going to start to, those pieces are all going to start to separate out. The receiver then becomes a tuner piece, amplifier piece, or 2 monoblock amplifier pieces, even more separate. And the preamp will be a preamp as well, another piece. So when you triamp, you have 3 amplifiers per side, low, mid, and high. Now, why is that good? And why is that cool? And so all that. Because when you think about it, when you shoot a full range signal to a filter, to your speaker rather, okay? You shoot it out to your speaker, and then when it hits that filter, your full range signal, it's going to divvy. Let's see if I think I have one right here. It will split into low, mid, and high. Here's one that's incomplete because I cannibalized it to grab some stuff off it. But okay, so here's what it looks like. This is inside your speaker, okay, and it is a circuit board usually. Sometimes they don't have circuit boards and they're just point-to-point wired. There's another audiophile term, point-to-point. Okay, that means no board. All these things just go like the little ends that come out of the resistors and everything. They all just solder together rather than, let's see if we can find some things to show you. They solder together rather than to the board. So here's a coil, okay, an inductor, and this would normally go, say, down into a PCB, and then and then this capacitor would be over here, and it would be in holes, and the two would be connected by a thin sheet of copper that is clad to fiberglass, FR4, whatever. It's clad to another piece, and it just keeps everything together and tidy, and you can, it's good for mass production. Now, when you point-to-point wire something, you take this and you just solder it right to this leg. Okay, so inside a speaker, you'd see this maybe on the bottom and on the floor in there, or underneath in a compartment, where all these are just stuck together, and then they hot glue this to the wood, or MDF or whatever. But all the parts are just point-to-point wired. Okay, if something is point-to-point wired, it's typically higher quality than if it's on a PCB, even though it's a very high quality, really stout PCB. It's just if something is advertised as point to point, there's no boards in there. It's all just point to point wired. Point to point is more is higher quality because it doesn't run the signal onto a little piece of foil stuck onto fiberglass. It's actually just goes. There's less. It's a shorter pathway if you do tip to tip on all the component parts. It's just a shorter pathway. There's none of this crap the signal doesn't have to run through these things, and that can cause distortion and so forth. And these are all small things, but they add up. So, okay, so here's an example of, your speakers. Okay, so your red and your black go on here. Your outputs, there's 3 outputs up here. A pair, right? Red and black, so positive, negative, low, mid, and high, okay? And that's normally done at the speaker, like in this thing. Okay, when you shoot this, a full range signal, and then when it hits here and it divvies all the frequencies into the different areas, you're filtering off certain parts of the frequency that you're just wasting as heat. because you're burying it. You're taking it and you're cutting it off and making it so that no highs go through it. But what happens to all those highs that don't pass through that capacitor? Well, are all the lows that don't pass through the capacitor? Well, it turns them into heat. It absorbs them. Okay, so it's wasted energy when you do that. A passive crossover, wasted energy. And not only that, but there's anomalies associated with that crossover, phase issues, different things that you have to overcome when you use a passive. An active crossover is you filter it before the amp. You do it electronically. You have an active, it's a piece of gear, right? And what it does is it sends that amplifier, and then that amplifier, you have 1 amp per driver. So if you have a 3-way speaker, you have 3 amps, you have 3 drivers, a woofer, a mid, and a high, a tweeter, and 1 amp for each driver. So you've got 1 for the low, 1 for the mid, 1 for the high, and that's all it powers. And the only window of frequency that amplifier does is the exact window of frequency that you need for that driver, if that makes sense. So the lows only come to that bottom amp. It only receives lows. So when it amplifies only the lows. The mid one amplifies only the mids. It's not wasting its energy by amplifying the highs and the lows just to have them snubbed out when it hits the passive filter and turned into heat. It's like, why make that part of the frequency if you're not going to use it? Why send it to that speaker if it's not going to use it? It's a waste. And so a rig that has an active triamp, for instance, on a 3-way speaker is going to be the most efficient way that you can power that system. There's no other more efficient way to power that speaker. So it is going to sound completely better. It's going to have less distortion. It's going to have more headroom. It's going to, it sounds different. Trust me, it sounds different. You've never heard something sound so clean and be able to play so loud. Not that cranking music is what we like to do, but, yeah, we do. But no, for real. It's I like to play loud because it feels live. And my speakers are 6 feet tall and 7 feet tall. I'm sorry, they're 7 feet tall. So when you turn it up, it's like a concert, really, and it just gets exciting. You're fired up, and the music's great. You want to turn it up. If you don't want it to shit the bed, you don't want your rig to shit the bed, you're better off doing a biamp or a triamp setup where everything's it's not gonna have any waste. It's just gonna be very efficient, and it's just gonna accomplish the deal better. So that was kind of a long way to tell you about a term called triamp or biamp, or active crossover, or an active biamp rig, an active triamp rig. That's what that means. So if you tell somebody you've got an active biamp rig, not only is it a term that an audiophile needs to know what the hell you're talking about, but then they know you mean business because of what you just said you have. I've got an active triamp or an active biamp. Right there, it just tells them you're here. Okay, this guy's here. He knows, he's been doing this a while. So that's something about the how the system is amplified. Let's see here. So okay, how about like terms to describe sound? You don't say rich sounding. That's like somebody who your dad, like, no, but a lot of your dads might have been audiophiles. Mine was not. But, it's somebody who knows nothing really about hi-fi, says it's rich sounding. That's a term we do not use. What's another would be like, what do they say? Sharp. Okay. Sharp is extremely bad. If you say something sounds sharp, it's bad. That is a negative, derogatory term. There's something wrong if it's sharp. Okay, that indicates it'll cut your eardrums. Okay, so sharp, you rarely use sharp unless you're trying to completely diss on somebody and his rig or the whatever, not somebody but the rig rather, and even then it's not you can come up with something better than sharp. Here's a polite way of saying sharp. Strident. okay? It's a little bit strident, okay? That means it's a little brisk, it's a little abrupt, it's a little shocking, it's a little strident, you know, okay? Another way to say it politely, even more politely, it's and this is depends on how you use it, because this can be a compliment or it can be a diss depending how it's used. Accurate, okay, or I'm sorry, analytical. Okay, so that one can go both ways. Analytical can be good, analytical can be bad. So you have to listen to the way it's being used and the expression on their face or whatever, you know, to determine if it's analytical. It just means it's very detailed. That means you're hearing every little bit of the music. You're analyzing the music and you're hearing every little bit because it sounds analytical. So it's telling you everything you want to know. It's spilling its guts on the story. Now that might bug you. That might be too talkative of a person, you know? So analytical could be too much for somebody. And on the other hand, analytical, somebody might say they love to critique music to that level. And so analytical is perfect for them because they demand it be that level. A more polite way to say analytical is accurate. Okay, that's what I use. I say accurate because accuracy means that it is also telling you everything that's there. It's not holding anything back. It's not embellishing. It's not covering anything. It's being extremely accurate means you're hearing everything. Okay. So accuracy can be a double-edged sort of a thing as well. Now, if we go the other way and we're talking about something that is soft sounding, okay? Soft is not a term that we use. Actually, you could use soft because it's not very offensive. What would be offensive is rolled off. I remember when I was learning terms, and not learning terms, but like appropriate times to use them. I said to Jeff Rowland, yeah, the amp sounds a little rolled off to me, and holy shit, did that light him up. Like, rolled off? What do you mean rolled off? You're crazy, you know? I mean, it was like, holy shit. I didn't mean it that way, but I picked the wrong term, you know? I mean, rolled off to an amp designer just means its design is shitty, you know, because it's rolled off. It means it doesn't meet all the way to the top frequency. It falls short of the top frequency. So if something sounds soft to you, and rolled off is extreme, okay? So when you say something's rolled off, you're dissing on it. You're saying it's falling short of where it should go in the high frequency. It's rolled off. So rolled off means soft sounding. A polite way to say this is to say musical. And musical is right on the line too. Musical can be bad. Musical can be, it's a polite way of saying, you know, soft, or it can also be a way of saying like tonally correct. Like it has a nice tone. It has nice musicality to it. Musical is great when you use it with low frequency. If you say, wow, that's got real musical bass, okay? That's a compliment, because that means that the low frequency isn't just thumping, that it has tonal characteristics too, as well. So you hear the tone in the bass, that is musical low frequency, that's musical bass. And so that's a good thing, always good. That's not a diss. Organic, sometimes you use that, organic, okay? Organic can also mean natural, okay? So when something sounds real, okay, you can say it sounds very organic. Very organic sounds it's very real sounding. It's not digital sounding, okay? It's not hyper detailed. It's not analytical or cold. It's very much organic sounding. It sounds real. Another good way to say real is lucid. That's what a term that I use commonly is lucid, which entails great detail and very realistic, but it does not have a bad connotation to it at all. So if you say something is lucid, you're complimenting its ability to image. It's lucid. It's like a lucid dream. It's like something that's not there seems like it's there. It seems like the person, the vocalist, it seems like they're right here. That's lucid sounding. That's very lucid. Fleshed out. A nice way to say mid-range. Fleshed out means it's like it has a texture to it. It has a density and a texture that is very human-like. It's fleshed out. It's fleshed out. It has a fleshed out mid, which is a compliment totally. That sounds natural. That's an organic thing. It sounds natural. It sounds real. It's a lucid thing. You know, it's fleshed out. So that one's good. You know, another derogatory for something in the mid might be like honky, you know, which would be something you would say about a horn. You know, kind of honky, a little bit stark or dry. Both of those terms mean something that is stark or dry is cold. It's a sound that is like, it doesn't really feel good. It's not a warm, fuzzy hug. It's like a cold stepmother's bitch slap. It's, you know, it's something totally different. You know, so stark would indicate it's lacking body. Stark would be like lacking body, a little cold. It needs a little more, maybe needs more meat on the bone. It needs, so density is a good one. If it's got good density, if something has good density, it's got texture in the mid-range, it's got weight, it's got body, and you feel that. That's a feeling thing, you know, you're just right in the middle. It's like, it's Rubenesque, you know. I mean, I don't know that I would use that term. That's like something for artwork, but you could use that for audio. Just say it's Rubenesque. It would indicate that it's very full-bodied, and maybe that one could be a borderline too much word, where it's, depending on how you use it, it's either too much body or it could be just nice and plump. Then you like it like that, you know. Liquid is a term that you use for mid-range. Liquid mid-range means like it's juicy. Okay, it's liquid, it's juicy, it's not dry, it's not stark, it's liquid, you know. It's the opposite of that. Let's see. Dynamic. I should explain dynamic. So dynamic or punchy. Dynamic means the ability to go from low volume to high, something high amplitude, from low amplitude to high amplitude, meaning small sounding to big sounding, in fast. Okay. If it can do that fast, and it has a big expanse, like the difference between the little and the big is a wide difference, then that is very dynamic. It's got a wide dynamic range. Okay, so it's got great dynamics. Punchy is a term used to describe the instantaneous punch that something has. And it's usually, punchy is usually solid state for sure. It's an amplifier thing. Punchy, you get, you know, the rig can be punchy. You know, the speaker's not going to be a punchy speaker. It can sound punchy, but it's the amp that's doing the punching. So punchy is an amp descriptor, usually. Punchy, and it just means it's something that has a lot of power, good grip on the woofer, and it's just you know, instantaneously giving you what you need for the music. So there's punchy. Let's see. And then it's just like, you know, terms like tired and things like that those are sideline terms. If you could use that for a lot of things, not just hi-fi. It's not hi-fi specific. Let's see. So there are some other things too, since I'm rolling on different terms. So giant head syndrome, okay? Giant head syndrome is when you're listening to a big tall speaker, okay, like a 7-foot tall speaker, and it sounds like the vocalist has got a massive, like, huge ass head in the middle, and like it's a giant singing to you, like just a big head. If you close your eyes, it sounds like a giant. The scale of the sound sounds like it's a huge head singing. So giant head syndrome is what that refers to. So lifelike soundstage would mean when you close your eyes and you listen, it sounds like real life size. It sounds like you're at a concert. It really, the scale, you have to think of these sometimes. Close your eyes and listen to your music and think of the scale of it. How big is it in reality? If you were at a live concert, you would imagine when you close your eyes, you know how big everything is and what it sounds like for its size. If you're farther away, you know, it's maybe the scale would be a little bit bigger, smaller. But the scale, so if you you can describe that is a descriptor of the scale of the soundstage. So if you say lifelike soundstage, it means life size. You could say if you were describing something small, you could say it's sort of a smaller soundstage, meaning it's not quite life size, it's a little bit smaller. If you're dissing on it, you'd say like it's got a miniature soundstage, or it's got it's like a micro soundstage. It just means super small and condensed and all in the middle, and just like there's little people singing to you, you know. That's like a very small, a teeny or soundstage or something like that, or an undeveloped soundstage or underdeveloped soundstage, or a small soundstage. So you can refer to that as, and that refers to the scale. You can also refer to the depth of the soundstage and the width. So if it's got a wide, deep soundstage and it's expansive soundstage, then that means you don't hear the walls. That the wall would be the front wall where the speakers are. It's like there's no wall there. The side walls, it's like there's no walls there. That's wide, expansive soundstage. Okay. Typically, you'll get that from planar magnetics or dipole type speakers, because they reflect backwards, and you get a very large open sound. So you can refer to the depth of the soundstage. The scale is the other one that I just mentioned of the soundstage. You can refer to, let's see, realism. I think I talked about that. Realism is a big one too. You can refer to the system's realism, and those are terms like lucid and organic and fleshed out. You know, that really describes realism. Let's see, what other things? Bass. Okay, if we're talking about bass, you have, okay, we talked about musical bass. That's always good. If it's boomy, okay, that's a certain sonic. That's not very good. That's boomy, meaning it's just, it rings out. You hear it everywhere, and it's just bloated is another word for that. Bloated and boomy are terms for bass, and neither one is good. You do not want bloated or boomy bass. You want tight, controlled bass. You want musical bass. You want tonally correct bass. Okay, so that's the kind of thing. Let's see what else. You can refer to, how good the rig is at handling complicated music. Okay, if it's congested, that means it cannot handle fast things all at once when there's a lot of it, like orchestral music, or things that are blah, 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 a lot of things going on at once, maybe Zeppelin with a whole bunch of things going on at once. You know, if it's congested, it's like it's kind of up, it's tighter. That's another good thing that I just thought of. Okay, so that's congested. It can't really do it. Now, something that is effortless is the opposite of congested, or you wouldn't constipate. Congested, effortless. Okay, so effortless just means when you listen to it, it sounds just like it takes no effort. It's like this music is just coming out of the air, and it's just like it's just everywhere, and it's just there, and it's so easily there. It's not hard for it to get there. It's very easily and accessible, and very, very effortless. The system is not working hard at all. The system is just working beautifully, and it's effortless. Okay, and then there's now I'm starting to get, I'll think of some, these are a little bit more technical terms, and actually these are sounds that you hear when something electronically is happening. Like, it's not just describing the sound of the rig, it's describing an anomaly or a problem. Like overdriven, okay, is a sound. That's like distortion, when you hear things being distorted, but it's not turned up loud. That's the input being overdriven on the amp, or on the preamp. Somewhere, something's input is being overdriven. So you hear distortion when it's not playing super loud. You can hear that cruddy, just cruddy it sounds just cruddy and cloudy and just, you know, that kind of thing. That's overdriven. So that's that. Appreciate you joining me, and I'll see you.